To become a Christian is to begin to follow Jesus. It's not to start being perfect. It's not to know every answer to every theological question. It's not to get perfect church attendance. It's not to change your life in a bazillion different ways. Simply, it's follow Jesus. Good news, y'all. Throughout the Gospel of John, we're gonna see Jesus receive people with all kinds of mixed motives. He just starts with where you are. That's good news for you, isn't it? You just gotta be prepared for him to transform those questions that brought you to him. Maybe you're here this weekend because you think Jesus can help you with some felt need. You're in a marriage crisis, a singleness issue, a parenting issue, problems with your kids, a financial crisis, a health crisis. Maybe you're just scared about what's going on and what's gonna happen to you when you die, or maybe you're just troubled about the future. Y'all, Jesus can help you with all of those things. But the questions he has for you ultimately are bigger. A lot of times you're thinking down here and he's gonna start talking way up here, and he's just gonna start doing some things to take your eyes off of this and put it onto that. So Jesus said, come and see. So they came and they saw where he was staying, and they stayed with him the rest of that day, for it was about the 10th hour, or about 4 in the afternoon, because they started counting the hours at 6 a.m. Verse 40, one of them was Andrew, Simon's brother. He went and found Simon and said to him, we have found the Messiah. He brought Peter, that's gonna become Simon's new name here in a minute. He brought Simon Peter to Jesus. Jesus looked at him and said, you are Simon, the son of John. But from this point on, you're going to be called Cephas. Cephas is the Aramaic version of the name Peter. Peter is Greek, Cephas is Aramaic. Both of them mean the same thing. They both mean rock. This is where Jesus first meets the Apostle Peter, and it's our second major question. What's really your name? I want you to notice that in the first meeting, Jesus gives Peter a nickname. Y'all, I love people like this, who find some admirable quality about you and then name you after it. Do you got any friends like that do that? I've got a couple of them. One of my favorite episodes of Big Bang Theory is where Wolowitz is trying to get the nickname Rocket Man from the other astronauts on this new team that he's joined. So he sets his ringtone to the song Rocket Man and has it go off when he's on a Zoom call with them to try to trick them into giving him that nickname. But just as that happens, his mom calls up to him and asks him if he want any more Fruit Loops. So the other astronauts give him the nickname Fruit Loops instead. Or George Costanza on Seinfeld, who wants the nickname T-Bone and ends up with the nickname Coco the Monkey. By the way, y'all see what I did there? Something for the younger people, something for the older people. I'm trying to be a pastor for all of you people, okay? Peter was not jockeying for a nickname, but Jesus gave him one that prophesied his future. In verse 42, Jesus goes through 3 iterations of Peter's identity. Simon, that's his current name. Son of John, that's his family identity. You could almost think of that as his past name. And then Cephas, which means rock, that's a picture of what Jesus is going to make him into. Y'all, that was all in their first conversation. What an introduction. But there's an important lesson there for you and for me. See, when you come to Jesus, you cease to be defined by your past, who your parents were. You also cease to be defined by your present, what you've accomplished or your mistakes and your failures, and you start to be defined by who Jesus is making you into and the plans that he has for you. He knows who you are, he knows who you were. Most importantly, he knows who he is shaping you into. So let me just ask you, what names have defined your past and present? Maybe they've been put on you by people who did not care about you. Maybe they've been put on you by people who did not understand you. Maybe they've been put on you by your enemy himself. Stupid, unloved, a failure, unattractive, difficult, a problem, a burden, not enough, addict, broken, damaged goods, failed father, criminal. That might be accurate based on who you were. It might even be who you are, but Jesus will no longer call you by those names. He calls you by a new name and says, this is what you will be. I have given you a new name, beloved, chosen, adopted, redeemed, restored, a rock for my church, a fountain of blessing, a co-heir and a co-ruler with me, one who shines like the stars in the sky, pointing many to righteousness. That's your new name, and that's what I'm calling you immediately. Verse 43, the next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee. And there he found Philip and said to him, "Follow me." All right, let's review what we've seen thus far. Jesus appears before us as the Lamb of God, who alone can take away our sins. He asked us what we're really searching for in life. He gives us a new name. And now he extends to us the essential invitation of the Gospels: follow me, or in Hebrew, lehacharai, which to me just sounds cooler than follow me, doesn't it? Lehacharai. What does it mean to become a Christian? What's it mean to become a Christian? According to the Gospels, very simply, to become a Christian is to begin to follow Jesus. It's not to start being perfect. It's not to know every answer to every theological question. It's not to get perfect church attendance. It's not to change your life in a bazillion different ways. Simply, it's to follow Jesus. Jesus invites people everywhere, anywhere to follow him. Now, I just want to acknowledge, a lot of people don't know exactly what that means. I mean, back then, when Jesus said, "Follow me," it was pretty straightforward. You literally just followed him. He went that way, you went that way. But today, he's not physically here anymore. He's invisible. So what does it mean to follow him? What does it mean to follow him in college? What does it mean to follow him in your career? Great question. Back in those days, when you wanted to follow a rabbi, you would go and sit at the feet of that rabbi, and that rabbi would begin to examine you with questions and put you through a series of tests to see if you were worthy of being their disciple. If you passed all those tests, they would invite you to follow them, at which point you would literally go everywhere with them, listening to everything they taught, watching all the ways that they interacted, and then trying to imitate their every move. A guy named Ray von der Laan, who is a historian who specializes in first century Israel, said that in those days, the greatest praise that you could give to a talmid, which was the Hebrew word for disciple, the greatest praise you could give to a talmid, a disciple, was the dust of your rabbi is all over you. That did not mean, dude, you're dirty, go take a shower. It meant you have followed your rabbi so closely that you have heard everything he has said, you've seen everything he's done, and everything he has stepped in has splashed up on you. Now, all that should give you a picture of what it means to follow Jesus. In fact, here's Ray von der Laan's definition. A talmid, a disciple, is somebody who seeks not only to know what his master knows, he also wants to do whatever his master did. Two elements there. You see them? The first is learning. You want to know what your master knows. Listen, I don't know any other way to say this. If you want to be a disciple, there's a lot of learning involved. If you're serious about being a disciple, your life is going to be filled with a lot of learning, a lot of listening to messages, being regular in church, reading books, participating in small groups, some leadership cohorts, and seeking to grow in your knowledge. You say, but I'm not really an academic kind of person. Look, you don't have to be. I'm just saying that if you're in love with somebody, you're going to learn all about them. And that's a big part of the Christian life. But see, that's just half of the discipleship formula. The other half is doing. A disciple does not merely want to know what his master knows. He or she also wants to do what his master does. How did he live? What were his priorities? What was his general agenda? When I was in high school, this bracelet became really popular. I still see people wearing them today, in fact. This first came out in 1989 when I was in high school, and I told people that WWJD stood for Women Want JD. That was high school JD's sense of humor, okay? But of course, what it really stands for is what would Jesus do? Comes from an old book written in the 1890s by a guy named Charles Sheldon. The book's called In His Steps. It's a fantastic book if you've never read it, but it's the story of a really wealthy young adult who took this invitation to imitate Jesus really seriously. And so he began to ask himself, in every situation, if Jesus were in my place, what would he do right now? What would Jesus do in this conversation? What would he do if he had my resources? What would Jesus do if he were presented with these alternatives that I have now right in front of me? What would Jesus do is not the only consideration in the Christian life, but it's a great place to start. Following Jesus means seeking to know what he knows and also do what he does. Around the summit, you will hear us simplify that into the 5 identities of the disciple. We say that basically to follow Jesus, you become these 5 things because these 5 things summarize the essence of Jesus' life. He was a worshiper, a family member, a servant, a steward, and a witness. As a worshiper, that means you'll be part of this weekend gathering regularly and consistently in the Word and in prayer. As a family member, you're gonna be part of a smaller community of discipleship in our church. Since church is not an event you should attend, it's a family you belong to. So you're gonna be a family member and you'll be in something like a small group. As a servant, you're gonna commit to serving in our church and then through our church in our city. As a steward, you're gonna be committed to giving generously of your time, your talent, and your treasure. As a witness, you're gonna be praying for and sharing the gospel with friends in your life that don't know Jesus. Specifically, you're one, which is that one person that you have identified that God has put into your life to reach out to. A worshiper, a family member, a servant, a steward, and a witness. We call that our discipleship pathway, what it looks like, practically speaking, to follow Jesus. Verse 45, Philip then went and found a friend named Nathanael. And he said to him, we have found him of whom Moses and the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. Nathanael said to him, can anything good come out of Nazareth? Yes, that was as snobby as it sounds. Real quick, Nazareth was the redneck part of Israel. All dueling banjos and pickup trucks and spitting tobacco and marrying your cousins and whatnot out there. And Nathanael was like, look, can anything good come out of that place? Veronica and I really appreciate this because I'm from Wheeling, West Virginia, and she is from Andalusia, Alabama. Can anything good come out of Wheeling, West Virginia or Andalusia, Alabama? In college, my family lived in Yadkinville, North Carolina. Can anything good come out of Yadkinville? So for all of you from redneck, hole in the wall, wrong side of the tracks kind of towns, Jesus feels you. Nathanael's like, anything good come out of that place? Totally snobby. Philip said to him, come and see. By the way, I love this. I love this as an evangelism strategy. Philip tells Nathanael his story with Jesus, how amazing Jesus is. Then Nathanael asks an antagonistic question. How can the Messiah possibly come out of Nazareth? Philip doesn't even attempt to answer it. He's like, hey, come see for yourself. Some of you have a friend that you want to tell Jesus about or tell about Jesus. But you're afraid of how that friend's gonna react, aren't you? You just need to follow the example of Philip. Jesus does not need your help converting that person. He'll do all that. He is fully sufficient on his own. You just gotta tell them your story like Philip did. And then when they ask you an antagonistic question, you just say, come and see for yourself. Come to our Christmas services with me. Hey, why don't we just read the Bible together? Jesus will do all the converting. You just got to extend the invitation. I always think of it like if you were charged to defend a caged lion. You don't need to defend the lion. Somebody's attacking, insulting the lion, just open up the gate of the cage. The lion will do all his own defending. What I say is, hey, just come and see. Come and see. Let's read the Bible together. Come to our Christmas services. Verse 47, Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him. And he said of him, behold, there is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit. And Nathanael said to him, how do you know me? Jesus answered him, well, before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you. Nathanael answered him, Rabbi, you're the Son of God and you're the King of Israel. Now let's just be honest. On the surface, that seems like a pretty disproportionate response, right? I mean, we get in this Bible mode where we read it and just accept it, but just think about it actually happening. Jesus is like, I saw you under the fig tree, and Nathanael responds, Rabbi, you are the Son of God, you're the King of Israel. That seems a little extreme to me. If you and I have never met, think about it, and one day somebody introduces us, and I say, wait, I know you. I saw you in Walmart the other day in the kitchenware aisle. You might be impressed by my memory, perhaps even a little creeped out, but you probably aren't gonna say, Pastor, surely you are the Son of God, the King of Israel. What's going on here? I may be using a little artistic license here, but only just a little. The only reason Nathanael would respond that way is if something had happened under that fig tree that was so personal and so private for Nathanael that Jesus just knowing about it indicated to Nathanael that Jesus knew everything about him.